So I hope none of you slaps me out of the way. But I'll try to keep the class short today. So we are doing the Bhagavad Gita is like a jigsaw puzzle and it can be fit together in various ways. So we are trying to see the answers to Arjuna's questions by Krishna as the framework by which we put the Bhagavad Gita together. And yesterday we stopped at the 10th chapter, or rather the 11th chapter, the first question, wherein we discussed about how Arjuna is, so in the 10th chapter, 10 questions have come. 11th chapter, the 11th question has come. That is, please show me your universal form. And now when Arjuna asks this question, see, the Bhagavad Gita is a live conversation. At the same time, it is also written as a text. So there is in good literature, there is something called foreshadowing. Foreshadowing means if somebody comes into a room and there's two people talking in the room, but you see there's a gun in the room. So before that scene ends, the gun should be shot. Otherwise, what is the gun doing over there? Something should happen with the gun. So when Arjuna asks Krishna, please show me the universal form. So Krishna says, yes, I will show it to you, but I will show you something more. And what that something more is, Arjuna gets much more than what he bargained for. So we discussed how Krishna is an expert teacher. And the expertise of a teacher is, one expertise is that if a question is asked which is not really related to the flow of the subject, the expert teacher brings it back, the answer back to the flow of the subject. So in one sense, the Bhagavad Gita is Arjuna asking what is the right thing to do. And Krishna wanting Arjuna to take part in doing dharma. So the question of the universal form is not directly relevant. But what Krishna does is, Krishna answers the question and he reveals the universal form. The Bhagavad Gita uses a triple descriptive. It means, first, sometimes when you see something extremely difficult or extremely extraordinary, it's, what am I seeing? Suppose nowadays if you go to a modern art museum and it seems to be just like a haze of colors. So before we can see the art, you ask, what am I seeing? So like that, first Krishna describes to Arjuna what I will be showing you. That's first 4 verses from 5 to 8. Then after that, 10 to 14 in the 11th chapter, Sanjay describes to Dhritarashtra what Krishna is showing Arjuna. And then 15 onwards, Arjuna sees what I'm seeing. So he says, Pashyami Vishweshwara Vishwarupa. He says, I see you in your universal form. And then he goes on describing the universal form. And around the 25th verse, Arjuna's emotion, which is initially of awe, Vismitosmi, that awe, that astonishment changes to Bhayena cha pravittam manome. It becomes fear. And then he asks, by the time he sees this whole terrible sight, what is Arjuna saying? Just to get a parallel of it. Suppose we go to say we are going to watch some action movie, and we expect some action, but suddenly we find that action movie is a horror movie. Now the emotion changes. If there is some like very terrible looking monster, and that monster is just destroying everything, and then we will be scared, and suddenly we find that monster is not just destroying everything, that monster seems to be burning up the houses around our house. Hey, what's going on? And then we try to change the channel, and we find the remote is frozen, and we see all around us everything is burning. So we'll get unnerved at the very least. So for Arjuna, what happens is, oh, I want to see the universal form. He sees the universal form and it's magnificent. Oh, he says, everywhere I can see heads and legs, I can't see the beginning and end. But then suddenly he sees that universal form is giving out fire. And that fire is not just going everywhere in the universe, it is on the Kurukshetra battlefield. And he sees the warriors in the Kurukshetra battlefield being destroyed. And he sees that what happens is they are going into the mouth and churnita uttamamai, that they hit against the teeth of the universal form and their head cracks apart. And then he says, Leliyase grasamana samanta. He says that the universal form is licking the blood that is smashing. He says, what is this sight? What is this sight? And then Arjuna asks, Akhya himeko bhavanu grarupo. I ask you, who are you? So now he's already said this is a universal form. So why are we asking, who are you? So the point over here is, say, we are going for a walk with an old friend whom we have met after 10 years. And as we're chatting along, suddenly a group of 10 thugs attack us. And then we find that our friend just, exhibits our martial art moves and all those 10 friends are knocked out. And then we'll turn to him, who are you? So, when the question, who are you, is being asked, what is happening over here is, when we see something unfamiliar about someone familiar, and who are you? Like if you know somebody to be a very serious person, and that certain person suddenly becomes very, very jovial and starts making jokes, we say, who are you? What have you done to my friend? Where has my friend gone? So, now Arjuna knows about the universal form. The universal form Krishna has shown earlier. He has shown to Yashodhamai, he has shown to Duryodhan. But in none of those forms, Krishna had this, the universal form had fire coming out of his mouth and destroying and devouring everything. So Arjuna is asking, who are you? Now, normally when we have these pictures of Krishna and Arjuna in the universal form, the way we show it is, Arjuna is here, Krishna is here, and Krishna is pointing his hands, and he's showing this is the universal form. However, the commentators explain that actually when Krishna starts showing the universal form, Krishna disappears. It is not that Krishna shows the universal form, sort of Krishna disappears and all that Arjuna is seeing is the universal form. That's why Arjuna is not turning to Krishna, hey, what is that? Because there's no Krishna over there. Only that is there. And that's why he's asking, who are you? Akhya himeko bhavanu grarupo. And the word Bhavan is a respectful second person address. There's Twam, which is a normal second person address. And this is Bhavan is a respectful second person address. Maybe we are just at home enjoying things and suddenly get a phone call. Kaun hai tu? And then it's our boss saying, main aapke liye kya kar sakta hu? So that immediately tu changes to aap. So even when Arjuna surrenders to Krishna, at that time he uses Twam. Pruchhami Twam dharma samura cheta. But when he sees the universal form, it becomes Bhavan. Akhya himeko bhavanugra rupo. And when Arjuna asks this question, Krishna also understands what Arjuna is asking. And that's why Krishna doesn't say, I am the Vishwarupa. What does he say? Kalosmi lokakshaykut pravritto. Says, I am time. So when I talk about that gun shown earlier, when Krishna says, I will show you what you desire, Arjuna, and I will show you something more. That something more is the Kala Rupa. So the Kala Rupa, since Vishwarupa, in the universe there are two things. There is space and there is time. So normally when Krishna shows the universal form, it is he showing his pervasion of all of space. But in the Kala Rupa, Krishna also shows his pervasion across time, his control across time, the unfolding of his will over time. So Krishna, he shows the universal form and then he says, Kalosmi, I am here for Lokesmi Pravutta. Now time does many things. Kalosmi Lokakshekrut Pravutta. Time creates, time maintains, time destroys. Now time is a concept for which most of us have no time. What do I mean? That we often ask, what is the time? We rarely ask, what is time? What is the time means, what is the measure, time as it is measured. But what is time actually? Time is one of the biggest unresolved mysteries in both science and philosophy. What is time? So Einstein thought of space-time as all coming together as one dimension. We have length, breadth, mass, length, breadth, width, and space. And that's what makes the universe. So length, breadth, width, and time. But the problem is in length, breadth, width, we can go forward, backward. In time, we can only go forward. We can't go backward. So time is not like other dimensions. So the Bhagavad Gita says time is a manifestation of the divine. So time creates, time maintains, time destroys. But why is it that Krishna emphasizes only the destructive aspect of time over here? He said, Kalosmi lokakshaya krutka krutto. He could have said loka sushti krutto. And I create, time creates. Why is that? Because that is revealed in the next verse. Krishna tells Arjuna that I am here for destroying all these warriors. And then he says, it is explicitly said this, by my arrangement they are killed. That means it's not that Krishna has a personal vendetta against anyone. It is they have done such karma by which they are deserved to die. And they are going to die. Arjuna, Rutepi Tvamna Bhavishyanti Sarve. Whether you fight and kill or not, with you or without you. Rute can be translated as except for you or even without you. So Prabhupada translates that except for you or Pandavas, everybody will be killed. But other acharyas also translated even without you. So that means their death is already ordained. Whether you fight or not, they are going to die. So, but if you fight, you will get the glory. Tasmat muktishta yasho labasva jitva shatrun bhangshu rajyam samritam mayai vaite nihata purvameva nimitta matram bhavasau visachi. So here what is Krishna has displayed the universal form. Within that he displayed the Kal Rupa as a, you could say, a bonus revelation. And that's how he brings that discussion back to the point. Krishna wants Arjuna to do his duty. Arjuna is thinking, oh, how can I fight and kill my relatives? Krishna says, it is not you who are going to kill the relatives. By their karma, they are already killed. If you don't fight, all that will happen is you will be irresponsible, you will fail in your duty, and you will be karmically culpable. It's like somebody is a terrible criminal, a serial killer, and that person has been judged in court and has been given capital punishment. Now the executor has to go and execute. The executor says, no, I can't kill. How can I kill someone? Well, that's not your decision. That decision has already been taken by the judge. If you don't kill, you are failing in your duty. Somebody else will do the killing. So Krishna is telling Arjuna, all that you have the facilities to become an instrument. So that's why in his purport, Prabhupada says that there is a higher plan in the universe and we are meant to cooperate in that higher plan. So this is Krishna's expertise in bringing the discussion, in bringing the answer back to the battlefield context. Arjuna, do your duty. Do your duty, because that way you will be a part of a plan bigger than yourself. Then there is only one section in the Bhagavad Gita where Arjuna offers prayers. That is from 36 to 46. Now Arjuna wanted to offer obeisances to the Vishwarupa, but the problem is, if you come to the temple, we can look at the deities and offer obeisances to the deities. But now imagine if you come to a temple where the deities everywhere. So where do we offer obeisances? So for Arjuna, that is the situation like that. So, Nama Purastadita Pushtataste Namostute Sarvata Eva Sarva. I offer obeisances from the front, I offer obeisances from the behind, I offer obeisances from all directions. Sahasra Putva, hundreds and thousands of times I offer obeisances. And then, now Arjuna understands this is Krishna, only Krishna is the purpose of Kala Rupa. But still, it is unnerving. It is still unnerving for him. So, what happens? Krishna says, please withdraw the universal form. Arjuna says to Krishna. And then Krishna teases Arjuna a little bit. He says, this form is so rare. Even the gods have not seen it. Why do you want to withdraw? He says, no, please withdraw it. And then what Krishna says, yes, this form is very rare, but then my two-handed form is even rarer. And then at this point, the 11th chapter ends. And it's remarkable that in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna has just in 11:33 said that your enemies are already killed by my arrangement. That Asmatam Jitva Shatrun is used the word. Jitva Shatrun Bhangshu Rajyam Samritam. Your enemies are already killed by my arrangement. And yet, at the end of that very chapter, in 11:55, Krishna says, Mat karma krun mat parmo mat bhakta sangha varjita nirvairah sarva bhuteshu yaha samameti pandava. He says, in this way you work for me. And nirvairah, vairi, what does vairi mean? Envy or enmity. Nirvairah means have no enmity for anyone. Nirvairah sarva bhuteshu, have no enmity for anyone and do your work. So what is going on? Just now Krishna told they are your enemies and they are killed by my arrangement. And he says, have no enmity towards it. So here is the subtlety of the teaching of the Gita. I mentioned in the earlier class that Krishna, if some people say, oh, Krishna caused a peace-loving Arjuna to fight a war. Why is God inciting people towards violence? Well, if Krishna's purpose had been just to get Arjuna to fight, he had a very easy way to do it. What was that? Just remind Arjuna how Draupadi had been dishonored. Arjuna's blood would boil and Arjuna would immediately start fighting. But not once in the Gita does Krishna mention that. Not one of the incidents of the Duryodhana and his side persecuting the Pandavas are mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. Why? Because Krishna doesn't just want Arjuna to fight. Krishna wants Arjuna to raise his consciousness and fight. And if Krishna incites Arjuna, they did this, therefore you should fight again, you should punish them. Then he's not raising their consciousness. His consciousness is lowering Arjuna's consciousness. And so Krishna's purpose is not just to get Arjuna to fight. It is to get Arjuna to raise his consciousness. See, the Bhagavad Gita is not a book of violence, it's not a book of non-violence. It is a book of transcendence. Not violence, non-violence, but transcendence. Now, transcendence means what? Having no selfish motive, becoming a transparent instrument for God's will. In that particular circumstance, Arjuna needed to fight. But Krishna is telling that nirvairaha, how can you have no enmity? Krishna is saying that it's like the executioner who is to kill a murderer, The executioner doesn't have anything personal against the murderer. This is my job. You did something wrong, this is the punishment for you. So Krishna is telling that yes, at one level, they are your enemies and they are going to die. But that's only functional. Have no intrinsic enmity towards it. So to better understand this concept, what happens is in the world, we all need to have functional designations for others. When I came to America, at the immigration, they asked me, where are you from? I cannot say that I'm a soul, I'm not from this material world. That would be ridiculous. That is true for all of us at one level. But at that point, we have to operate at the functional level. I have to say I'm from India. So at a functional level, when we are talking with people, okay, this person is an Indian, this person is an American, this person is from this part of the world. This kind of designations we have to keep in mind. But we also need to make sure that we don't reduce people to designations. So it's like the designations we have, if I consider this phone. Now, if I keep this phone at a distance and then I look at you, and what will happen is, I can see the phone and I can see you also. So whatever designations we have for others, we need to keep them at a distance. Yeah, this is how this person's functional role is. This person's functional, you could say, functional identity is. But that designation should not come too close. If it comes this close, what happens? I don't see you, I only see the designation. And then that will blind us. So we may say, so Krishna is telling Arjuna, yes, they are Shatru. They are your enemy circumstantially. But don't let that label come so close to you that you become filled with enmity for them. Functionally, they are enemies, fight against them. They are enemies of dharma, they are enemies of society, you have to fight against them. But don't let yourself get filled with hatred, with enmity, with animosity. So that is the subtlety of the Gita. Raise your consciousness. So that's why Shatru and Nirvairaha both come in the same chapter. Now, sometimes, like I explained at the end of the 10th chapter, more or less the Bhagavad Gita ends. So after that, Arjuna is asking various questions. Now, it's not necessary that, say, when after a class, different people ask questions. It's not that the first question asked by the first person, the second question asked by the second person are going to be connected with it, or there's going to be a flow between them. No. Even if the same person is asking different questions, they will just have different questions on their mind and may not necessarily be a flow between the questions that they ask. So now we could trace a flow. So between the 11th chapter and the 12th chapter, what is the flow? Well, the flow, we could trace it in one way. That is in 12.50, 9.50 Krishna talks Ekatvena Pruthatvena Bahuda Vishuddha Mukham. So now Krishna has talked about.
What special oral today?
I'm getting somebody's. Okay.
What special?
No. Okay. So Arjuna has asked, Krishna has talked about that there are these three, the universal form is between, there's a conception of oneness in between. And then there is the worship of the Devatas. So Krishna has talked about the worship of the Devatas in the 9th chapter. Krishna has talked about the universal form in the 11th chapter. And now Arjuna asks Krishna about, what about those who have this conception of oneness? So another way of understanding it is that the universal form pervades the world material, existence material. That is one manifestation of the divine. And Krishna at the end of the 11th chapter says that this form which pervades all of existence, beyond that or higher than that is my personal two-handed. Now Arjuna has a question, there is another manifestation of yours which pervades all of existence. That is your impersonal manifestation. What is the relationship of that with your personal manifestation? So if the materially all-pervasive manifestation is subordinate to you, is the spiritually all-pervasive manifestation also subordinate to you? That's why he asked the question that who is more intimately united with you? Is it those who worship you personally or those who worship your impersonal manifestation? And at this point, Krishna answers very categorically. He says, those who worship me in my personal form, they are the most intimately united with me. And this 12th chapter is called the Bhakti Yoga chapter, where Krishna first describes how he personally intervenes and delivers his devotees. Tesham aham samudharta. I will deliver you from the motion of material existence. And Krishna says this, and the Bhagavatam in the 10th canto, there's a beautiful verse which says that the Kurukshetra battlefield was like an ocean. And it was Krishna who delivered Arjuna from that ocean. And that ocean was filled with dangerous monsters like the Vingalas and others. So what Krishna has promised in the Bhagavad Gita 12.6 and 7, that Krishna does later in the Mahabharata war, and that's what he is glorified for in the Bhagavad. After that, Krishna talks about various levels at which bhakti can be practiced. He talks about the various qualities of devotees that endear himself to him. So that's the end of the 12th chapter. Then at the start of the 13th chapter, there is an important question. But before I go to that question, there is an important point which I would like to make, because Krishna makes that point very categorically. Let's see if I can. Is my screen being shared? Oh, I'm not sharing it. Okay. So, most of us who come to Krishna consciousness, we know about we know about personalism and impersonalism. Okay. Anyway, so we think of impersonalism as bad. It's Mayavada. But we have a very, you could say, a Mayavadi conception of Mayavada. What do you mean? Mayavadis say everything is one. So we also say that all impersonalism is one. But actually, all impersonalism is not one. Why is that? I'm unable to find that slide right now. But Krishna talks about impersonalism in two different ways in the Bhagavad Gita. In 9, 11 and 12, as well as in 7.24, he talks about those impersonalists who consider his form to be an illusion. And for them, he says, avajananti ma mudha and moghasha moha karma. But there are other impersonalists, The ultimate reality has an impersonal manifestation, and the ultimate reality may or may not have a personal manifestation, but we don't care about it. We are attracted to the impersonal manifestation. And these two are very different. So, what are the names that our tradition used for these two impersonalists? Yes. Who are the Brahmavadis? Okay, the positive. Okay, we could put it about those whom Krishna talks positively. So Krishna says, they will also attain me. But klesho diktarastesham avyakta sattachendasa. Avyakta higatim. It's a difficult process by which they will attain me, but they will attain me. So all those who teach oneness are not one. There is diversity among even the teachers of no diversity. So we cannot presume that just because somebody is saying everything is one, that doesn't mean they are necessarily Mayavadis. So anyway, so that difference Krishna makes. He talks about, say, that they are also seeking spiritual growth and they will also be elevated. But those who are devoted to me, I will personally uplift them. I will personally liberate them. So then the 12th chapter ends. And then in the start of the 13th chapter, there is a question. And there is a question about that question. For the 13.1 is missing in some renditions of the Gita. In some recensions of the Gita, at the start of the 13th chapter, there is no question. So some people say that, oh, was this question originally there or not? But the point is that question, it is, see, what happens is the Gita is among the books which has practically no interpolation. First reason, it's a very small book. And secondly, it has many commentaries. So the various traditions have preserved the commentaries, and that's how they preserved the verses also. So now, it's possible in some versions of the Gita, there may not be 13.1, that Arjuna asks there, can you tell me, explain these terms to me? Kshetra, Kshetrajna, and Purusha, Prakriti, and Jnana and Gya. Now, if that question were not there, what Krishna speaks thereafter, it just seems to be coming out of the blue. It like suddenly Krishna is seeing a subject with no connection with the past. So that question actually fits naturally into the flow of the Gita. But then still the question may come, why is Arjuna asking this question? Because Krishna has not talked about these terms. So this is where generally how does knowledge grow? See, knowledge grows when we are able to link the familiar with the unfamiliar. See, if I suddenly come here and say that today I'll speak about the changes in the populations of polar bears in Siberia. What? Why are you talking about this thing? What is the connection? But then I say, I'll talk about how, as human consciousness is declining, we are going to Rajoguna and Tamoguna, we are ruining the environment. And one tangible sign that the environment is being ruined is species are becoming extinct. And that is seen through the decline in the population of polar bears in Siberia. Then what happens is that something unfamiliar gets connected with something familiar. Then it makes sense to us. That's how knowledge grows. So Arjuna lived in a culture where it was not that he was spiritually ignorant. He had spiritual knowledge. And if we read the Mahabharata, especially in the time when the Pandavas were in the forest, they met many sages and asked many questions. And their questions were also wise, well-informed questions. So Arjuna knows about philosophy and Arjuna knows about Sankhya. So Sankhya is a school of thought which analyzes the world into its material limits. So Arjuna has heard this bhakti worldview. Arjuna has heard how Krishna has established bhakti to be the highest. What Krishna said in the end of the 8th chapter, that by bhakti you will get what other paths give and everything else also. So Arjuna wants to know how these Sankhya concepts, Kshetra, Kshetragya, Purusha, Prakriti, Jnana, Gya, all this fit into the bhakti worldview that Krishna is teaching. And that's why he asked these 6 terms. Now, the 13th chapter is among the toughest chapters of the Gita. It is the most Upanishadic kind of chapters. See, what is the nature of the Upanishads? The Upanishads, they are meant for people who are who are very analytical and intellectual. And that's why their mode of presentation is also like that. It's like if some big bodybuilder is there and you take them to a gym and that person is capable of lifting 40-50 kg weights, and then we give them 1 kg weight to lift. Don't you have anything better? So for them to do a workout, they need like that. So for somebody who's an intellectual, then they need an intellectual pathway to God. A non-intellectual pathway to God will not appeal to them. Yes, it doesn't make sense. Or let's put a simple thing. If somebody is an expert musician, they can sing very nicely, they can play instruments very nicely, and they want to practice bhakti. They want to sing for Krishna. And we tell them that from now onwards, you should only sing Prabhupada's Hare Krishna Dhun. No other dhuns. That's music, sing music. No, but in music there's so many other things and they have so many talents. Now Prabhupada's Hare Krishna Dhun is wonderful. It's transcendental. But for somebody who has musical talent, we cannot expect them to sing only that. That will be suppressing their talent. So if somebody has been gifted intellectual talent by God, intellectual ability by God, to expect them to appreciate bhakti or spirituality in a non-intellectual way is like expecting a very musically expert person to sing only a relatively simple tune. It will not work. So the Upanishads cater to these intellectual people. And that is the inclusiveness of the Vedic tradition, that there is a place for everyone. And actually, this is compassion. Compassion doesn't just mean making things simple. It means making things accessible. And for somebody who is highly analytical, they need things to be presented in an analytical way, and that is compassion for them. So compassion manifests in different ways for different people. So the 13th chapter is among the most Upanishadic among the Gita chapters. The Gita itself is called Gita Upanishad. But much of the Gita is in its structure is similar to the Mahabharata because it's a part of the Mahabharata. But this particular chapter is very Upanishadic. So I'll not go into the 13th chapter much. But Krishna answers about those 6 terms. And Krishna understands the intent of Arjuna's question. That Arjuna is not just interested in these terms. Arjuna is interested in the world view. That is Sankhya, in which these terms are prominent. And that's why Krishna then goes forward and he says, yes, you want to know about Sankhya? There is a concept from Sankhya which is quite integral to the Bhakti worldview. And that is the concept of the modes. So Krishna doesn't focus too much on Purusha, Prakriti, Kshetra, Kshetra, Jnana, Jnana. He explains it, but he focuses on the modes, the gunas. And that is the 14th chapter. And then he describes the gunas quite elaborately. At the end of it, in the 14th chapter, Arjuna has a question. And that shows Arjuna's, again, attentive hearing. If somebody tells, say now we all have experienced the pandemic. Say we came to know that, there is this disease spreading all over. In fact, this disease is everywhere. Now, if somebody were hearing seriously, or at least not even seriously, at least with a little attention, the obvious question would come, okay, how can I protect myself? How can I treat myself? If somebody hears about a disease, tells them this disease is everywhere. And they say, okay, when are you finishing your talk? I want to go now. Did you hear what I said? So when Krishna describes how the modes pervade all of existence, how they control all living beings, then Arjuna, on hearing this, he immediately asks the pertinent question. How to transcend the modes. He asks basically 3 questions at the part of the question. Kairlingais Trimunanetan Atito Bhavati Prabhu Kimachara Katham Chaitan Trimunati Vartate. He says, what are the characteristics of those who are transcended the modes? What are their external characteristics? What are their internal characteristics? And what is the way by which we all can transcend the modes? And those 3 questions Krishna asked in 14:20. And Arjuna asked in 14:20, and then Krishna answers the questions. So Now 14:21 to 25, the answer goes on. In the last verses, Krishna says you can transcend it by bhakti. Mam cha yoga vicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatityaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. So when he says this, now this raises a key question. What is Krishna saying? By practicing unbreakable bhakti, you will transcend the modes. But then this raises the obvious question. It is because of the modes that our practice of bhakti breaks. Isn't it? It is because of we are chanting very nicely at one moment, and next moment we are chanting Krishna, I want to surrender to you. And the next moment we surrender to Indra Devi. Just go to sleep. And we don't want to go to sleep, but we just fall asleep. So what happens is it's the modes that create an interruption in our practice of bhakti. So now it means, is there really a solution? And he's saying, Krishna is saying, how do you transcend the modes? By practicing uninterrupted bhakti. It's like saying, if somebody asks, I'm sick, how can I become healthy? Well, the person says, by not falling sick. If you don't fall sick, you'll become healthy. That doesn't seem to be an answer. But actually, it's not like that. This is where bhakti's speciality comes in. That Krishna says bhakti avivicharati. See, what does it mean? That the modes are going to influence us. And bhakti is not just about the actions that we do. Bhakti is also about our intentions. See, there are the things that we want and the things that we want to want. There are things that we want. You may I want to eat a lot, I want to sleep, I want to do this, I want to watch this, I want to watch this movie, I want to do these things. Okay, there are many things that we want. But then if there were an ideal version of us, or even if there is a slightly improved version of us, if we envision that version, what would that version want to want? That version wants to want what? I want to be disciplined, I want to be organized, I want to be fit, I want to be spiritually focused. So we humans have this capacity to differentiate between our wants and between what we want and what we want to want. And Krishna has already differentiated this in the second chapter. When he quotes that word, Apuryamana achala pratishtam samudram apa pravashanti advat tadvat kamayam pravishanti sarve sashantim apnoti na kama kami. So kama kami, wanter of wants or desirer of desires. So certain desires or certain wants will pop up inside us, either from external perceptions or from internal impressions. But we don't have to say yes to them. So what we want and what we want to want. So when we are chanting, our body and mind say, I just stop this and go to sleep. I just want to pick up my phone and surf social media. That's the want that will pop up within us. But what do we want to want? So what do we want to want? Do I want to focus on Krishna? Do I want to see Krishna? Sometimes we talk about, we should chant with attention. And that's important. But sometimes attention is just not in our control. Our attention may not be in our control, but our intention is in our control. I'm not able to focus on the holy name Krishna, but I want to focus on the holy name. So when Krishna is saying avyabhichari bhakti, see, the modes, when they influence us, they will change what we want. But they don't have to change what we want to want. I hope this is not too confusing, that there are certain desires that pop up within us. So Krishna doesn't just see our feelings. I'm feeling bored. Krishna, I don't want to feel bored. So Krishna doesn't just see our feelings. He sees our feelings about our feelings. And I'm feeling bored right now, but I don't want to feel bored. So when Krishna is saying avyabhichari bhakti, the modes will bring break, but the modes can bring breaks in our actions, in our emotions. But the modes can't bring breaks in our intentions. And if we hold on to the intentions, gradually the emotions and actions will also change. So to give another example, if we are in the ocean, the material world is often compared to Bhavasagar. In the ocean, waves are going to hit us. And when the waves hit us, they will just sweep us away. We can't fight against the waves. Sroto ganastamaranam bhajavasudevam. This world, the waves come and hit and hit and hit. We get swept away. Somebody said, by my willpower, I will not get swept away by the waves. Well, you keep saying, I'll not get swept away, and I'll find, I got always swept away. That will not work. But what we can do is, we can find a strong anchor and hold on to that anchor. If we hold on to that anchor, still the waves will hit us. And still we may get flung by the waves. But we won't get swept away. To the extent we hold on to that anchor, we will not get swept away by the waves. So for us, and Krishna is saying, Avyavichari Bhakti. What he means is, hold on to the anchor. Now, it's not that all the time our grip on the anchor will be equally firm. But as much as we can hold on to the anchor, that is wonderful. So Avyavachari Bhakti doesn't mean that our actions may not get interrupted, even our emotions may get not interrupted. We will not feel devotional at times. But we just hold on to Krishna. Then we will go beyond the modes. See, everything in the material world is temporary. And that's a bad thing if you are attached to material things. But for a spiritualist, what that means is, even when our emotions become non-devotional, that is also temporary. I don't feel like chanting, I don't feel like going to the temple, I don't feel like hearing Katha. Well, this feeling will also go away. And one last point, I'll go after this with this 40 chapter ahead. No, I'm not ending the class. So, normally we may say, oh, there's an anchor over here. And I tried to hold on to the anchor, but the wave was so strong that I got flung away. And what can I do now? But Krishna is such an anchor who is always available to us. We may get flung away from that anchor, but the anchor is still there again for us to catch up. So what happens is, there may be moments when we may slip, we may fall, but we can rise. We can rise. Maya can cause us to fall down, but we cause ourselves to fall away. Fall down means we're practicing something and we are overcome. But what happens is, oh, I fell down, let me just go away from here. That is our decision. We may fall down, but we don't have to fall away. So we may be flung away from the anchor. But okay, I went away from the anchor, now I'll stay away. No, we don't have to do that. It's like we decide I want to wake up at 4 o'clock. And something happens, whether the alarm goes or not goes, we don't even remember. And then we find I woke up at 5 o'clock. And then our mind says, you are such a fool, you are such a lazy person. You know, you are never going to wake up on time. So why bother? Go to sleep again. And then we could have woken up at 5 o'clock, but then we sleep till 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock, whatever. So maybe that waking up at 5 o'clock, maybe just too tired or we're too much under the influence of tamas. Okay, we couldn't wake up at 4 o'clock. But once we wake up, we can wake up at that time. Okay, so we may fall down, but when we give up, that's when we fall away. So yes, sometimes even the holding on to the anchor is very difficult. The grip will go off, but we can again grip. So it's interesting over here, there are different terms. Avyabhichar mamchayo avyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate. So avyabhichara, literally, like Sanskrit words are a little difficult to translate into English. So avyabhichar can be translated as unbreakable, or undeviated. But what it literally means is that avyabhichari means that our devotion doesn't go anywhere else. Our faith doesn't go anywhere else. Our intention doesn't go anywhere else. So there is apratihata and avyabhichari. They're two different things. Apratihata is uninterrupted. Krishna is not telling us that we are in the mode, we have to practice uninterrupted devotion. He says, in practice, we could say, I don't know what would be a translation for avyabhichari. It is, you could say, we could say, don't let your devotion get misdirected. I want to serve Krishna. I was unable to serve Krishna. But that doesn't mean I'll give up serving Krishna. I will start again. I'll start again. So that we could say it's undeviated in one sense. In terms of intention, we don't get deviated. And that's the theme which Krishna has said earlier also. Apiche sudharacharo bhajate mam ananya bhavak. He says somebody's done terrible actions, and how can they be undeviated in their devotion? What he means is, okay, I did something terrible. I'm sorry, Krishna, but I'm not going to give up on you. I'm going to start serving you again. So that is the answer to this 14th chapter question. In the 15th chapter, there is no question as such. What happens is, when Krishna speaks this is by bhakti, you will be able to overcome the moods. Then Arjuna has this question. Now, there are some questions are articulated, some which are not articulated. So Arjuna has this question, okay, is it equally easy for everyone? Was it possible for Duryodhana, when you came to him with a peace proposal, was it possible for him to accept it? Are some people just not capable of turning towards God? So then Krishna uses the metaphor of the upside down tree. And he says there are two kinds of nature. There are godly and ungodly. Daivi and Asuri Prakriti. This is for the Asuri Prakriti to turn towards him is very difficult. For the Daivi Prakriti to turn towards him is relatively easy. So this is a development further on the discussion of the modes. The Asuri Prakriti is in largely Tamoguna, Raja and Tamo. The Daivi Prakriti is more in Sattva, Rajas and Sattva. So Krishna is basically developing that further concept of the modes. But now, see, the difference between the analysis in the 14th chapter and the 15th chapter, that is the 16th chapter. But in the 15th chapter, what Krishna introduces the metaphor of the three modes, metaphor of the upside down tree. And again, in the 15th chapter, there is no question. He develops this metaphor to show how he is the anchor. Okay, the 14th chapter says that we practice avyapichari bhakti. Now, how can we, like I said, Krishna is the anchor who always exists everywhere. So in Krishna then in the 15th chapter reveals how he is the anchor who exists everywhere. So he says, you can't pursue me spiritually, pursue me materially. He says that the sun that provides heat and light, the sun's light comes from me. The food that you eat, that is provided by me. The food that you digest, that digestion is done by the digestive fire, which comes from me. So Krishna says, even in the material arrangements around us, the material arrangement that enable us to sustain ourselves, those are also by a higher arrangement. So if we see that, our very existence depends on many factors that are not in our control. If we see that, then we'll see, okay, this is God's benevolent arrangement. So even if we can't feel devotion towards God, oh, Krishna, you are so lovable, I love you. We can at least feel gratitude towards God. Krishna, you are sustaining my existence. And that is also one level of holding on to Krishna. That's in the 15th chapter. And 16th chapter is this, okay, why is it difficult for some people to hold on to? Then Krishna talks about the two kinds of natures, Daivi and Asuri Prakriti. And then at the end, Krishna says that actually Shastra is made in such a way that even those who are of a demoniac nature can be elevated, provided they follow Shastra. So that is the glory of our scriptures. It's not a 1-0. You do this or you're going to go to hell. Now, if you can't do this, do this. If you can't do this, do this. There are Sattvic Puranas, there are Rajasic Puranas, there are Tamasic Puranas, and they are there for everyone. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, when he was living, that was the time when India was going through a renaissance. Western ideas were coming to India, and many Indians were re-examining their own tradition. And Swami Dayananda Saraswati at that time wrote a letter critiquing the worship of the goddess Kali. He says this is such a ghastly form of worship. He was basically, in some ways, echoing the criticism of the missionaries, Christian missionaries. So at that time, Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote an article defending the worship of Kali. He says, I don't recommend it, but I defend it. Right? He says that for people who are in Tamoguna, for them, this is the kind of form they will worship. a god or a goddess who is having a skeleton, garland of skeletons, with the tongue coming out. That's the kind of divinity they'll be attracted to. So there is a place for this. So our scripture says that is not 1-0. Krishna says some part of Shastra you follow and get elevated. So Krishna says if you follow Shastra, you'll get elevated. If you reject Shastra, you'll get degraded. If you're faithful and follow Shastra, you'll be elevated. If you are faithless and reject Shastra, you'll be degraded. And then Arjuna is again very attentive. Arjuna immediately asks, what about those who are in between? That is the second last question of Arjuna. He says, what about those who are faithful but not in Shastra? Yah Shastra vidimutsrujya vartate shraddhayanvita tesham nishtha tu ga Krishna sattamaha rajastamaha. And Krishna says, okay. That means, say, now if we see in the world today, we may see there are different religions. There's Christianity, there is Islam, there is Judaism, there's so many other religions. Now we don't find the mention of these in the Bhagavad Gita. So how do we analyze these religions? Krishna says you look at the modes in which people are living. And how do we know the modes in which people are living? He says we look at their ahar, we look at their yajna, we look at their dana, and look at their tapa. Why look at the yajna, dana, tapa, and ahar, these four things? See, basically, we live in a universe. We live in various, the soul is here, the soul lives in various circles, in greater units of belonging. See, we live in a social circle. We live, first of all, we live in a physical circle, we live in the body. Then we live in society. And then we live in nature. So the physical circle we live in is called as Adhyatma. The social circle we live in is called as Adi Bhaut. And the environmental circle we live in is called as Adi Daiva. And we take things from all these circles. So we need to do things for all these circles also. So Yajna, Dana, Tapa is the way by which we return to the broader units we belong to. By Yajna, we satisfy nature. We satisfy the devatas who are overseeing nature. By Dana, we satisfy society. We take things from society. By charity, we give back to society. And by Tapa, by austerity, actually what we do is we satisfy our body. Now, what do you mean by austerity satisfy our body? Eating back food, I satisfy my body. No, actually, many times by food, we burden our body. There's an Egyptian saying that, you live on 1/4 of what you eat. Your physician lives on the remaining 3/4. So, most of the times, we tend to eat far more than we need to. So, austerity is not just about eating, there are various kinds of austerity. By austerity, what happens is, we have some mercy on our body. We don't have to work it all the time. Let it rest for some time. So, austerity is the way we harmonize with the body circle that we live. So, Krishna says, how do we know the stature of those who are following something but not based on scripture? He says, look at their yajna, dana, tapa. Yajna, dana, tapa doesn't literally mean that they have to do some fire sacrifice. It just means how do they belong to the various spheres that they belong to? How do they function within those? So somebody might be an atheist, but if they are charitable, if they are environmentally conscious, if they are regulated, then their philosophy may be in ignorance, but their mode of being, their lifestyle can be in goodness. So Krishna says, look at that. Look at these four things and then we can analyze. So this is a very universal, non-sectarian way of understanding who is where. That's why we understand that even in various religions, there are people in goodness, passion, and ignorance. And in the 18th chapter, Arjuna asks the same question he asked in the 3rd chapter. He asks, that what is the difference between sannyasa and tyaga? That means, what is the difference between the inner mood of renunciation and the outer adoption of the Ram sloka? It's the same question he asked in the 3rd and 5th chapter. And Krishna answers patiently. Krishna doesn't say, you dumb fool, I answered this question twice. Did you forget it already? He says, no. What he does is he takes this opportunity to answer from another perspective. What is that perspective? Now Krishna brings in the modes. And through the modes, through the framework of the modes, he analyzes the various components of action and he answers the question. And then this goes on till 1840. And after that, now Krishna starts summarizing the Bhagavad Gita. See, the summary of the Bhagavad Gita can be done in two ways. One is, see, it's like you are going up a mountain. When we are going up a mountain, we can describe to somebody what is the path. Okay, here you may have there may be some swamp. Here there will be a bridge you may have to cross. Here there will be a little rocky. Here there will be a little slippery. We describe that, and that prepares them to go up. But once we are at the top of the mountain, from there, when we are summarizing the journey of the mountain, it will be slightly different because we experienced it. So what Krishna is doing is, now from 1841 onwards, he is giving a summary from the top. He is from the Bhakti worldview, he brings it. So he starts with Karma Yoga, then he goes to Jnana Yoga, then he goes to Bhakti Yoga. And then, after that, what happens is, I'll conclude with two last points now, that this, now, as I mentioned earlier, that in the Bhagavad Gita, it is not that Krishna says, okay, now I have completed Atha, Dvitiyo Adhyaya, Atha, Tritiyo Adhyaya. It's a natural discussion. And the Bhagavad Gita is a discourse, it's a discussion in the form of a discourse, but it is not timed. It is not that Krishna and Arjuna planned, okay, we will have a 1 hour discussion now. So what happens is, the discussion going on is very deep. And it's not that Arjuna has some indication, oh, now the discussion is about to end. Krishna is speaking normal and suddenly Krishna says, Vimrishyaita dasheshena yathechicitta kuru. Now you deliberate and do as you desire. That is, but overwhelms Arjuna. He says, really? I am supposed to do, what should I do? Now Krishna spoke this in the 2nd chapter, he spoke that in the 5th chapter, he spoke that in the 10th chapter, he spoke that in the 15th chapter. Hey, what am I supposed to do? So here, what is Krishna doing? Krishna sees Arjuna's predicament. So in one sense, this Krishna telling Arjuna, do as you desire, shows his love for Arjuna. See, love means we respect the other person's independence. We can wish for their welfare, we can strive for their welfare, but ultimately we have to respect their independence. If a boy says to a girl, he proposes to a girl, please marry me. And she says, no, I'll shoot you. Well, that is not love, that is force. It is a force and the love is a farce. So Krishna expresses his love, saying, now do you do as you desire. I have given you food for deliberation, now you do as you desire. Now that is one aspect of love, to respect the other person's independence. But that is not the only aspect of love. It may seem that Krishna is telling over in 1863, do as you desire. But in 1866, what does he say? Sarva dharman parityaja mamekam sharanam vraja. Just give up everything and surrender to me. So was Krishna's 1863 do as you desire just a formality? Krishna didn't mean it, this is what he really meant. Is Krishna contradicting himself? Well, not exactly. As I said, love means to give the other person the independence to do what they desire. But love also has another aspect. Love is not just about respecting others' independence. Love is also about offering the other person the guidance that they want. So what happens is, Krishna sees Arjuna and Arjuna is lost in thought. So imagine you go to a doctor and the doctor says, okay, you've got this disease and you can do this, you can take this treatment. If you take this treatment, this is the cost and these are possible complications and this is a path for recovery. Or you can take this treatment and this can happen, this can happen, this can happen. Or you can take this treatment, or you can take this treatment. The doctor gives us 6 options. And then doctor says, now do as you desire. Okay. But what is your recommendation? I don't know. I have no recommendation. Don't do as you desire. No, but you are the expert. I am not the expert. No, I don't want to be sued by you. I won't give any recommendation. So that is like washing off responsibility. If the patient actually wants to know what would you recommend, then the doctor should tell. So now Krishna sees from Arjuna's expression that Arjuna is confused about what he should be doing. But Arjuna wants to know what Krishna wants him to do. See, when two people have a very sweet or very close relationship, even without words, they can speak to each other. Just a glance, just a gesture, that's enough to communicate. When two people don't have a good relationship, even the loudest screams don't lead to any communication. What happens is, they just don't hear each other. But in the case of Krishna and Arjuna, Krishna sees Arjuna's expression. And Krishna understands that Arjuna wants further guidance. And that's why Krishna said, now I will give you the most confidential knowledge. Sarva gohyatam ambhuya shunume paramam vacha ishtosi me dudamiti tato vakshami te hitam. This verse has 5 intensifiers. 5 ways Krishna is emphasizing this is the most important thing. Sarva gohyatamam, most confidential knowledge. Shunume paramam vacha, my supreme instruction. What is the difference between confidential and supreme? See, confidential is gohyatamam is sometimes translated confidential. The confidential is sometimes translated as secret, but it's less secret and more private. Now, what is the difference? Say, say a couple, they want to talk with each other. And say the husband is talking with somebody else. And the wife may say, she may say to the other person who is talking, can we have some privacy? We'll talk something. Now, privacy means, it's not that it's secret, but it doesn't concern you. So when Krishna is saying this is confidential knowledge, it is private. It is between the devotionally disposed soul and the compassionately disposed God. This Sarva Dharman Parityajya is not what Krishna wants the Gyanis and the Karmis to do. For them, there is a promise. But for somebody who is a Bhakta, of course, Krishna wants ultimately them to also surrender. But this Sarva Dharman Parityajya call is for one who is eager for Krishna to reveal what Krishna wants everyone to do. Otherwise, for everyone, there is their own progressive path. So Krishna says, this is the most confidential knowledge, topmost knowledge. And then, Shunume paramam vachaha. He says, Ishto sime dudamiti. I care for you. You are Ishta. You are loved by me. And how are you loved by me? Drudhamiti. I am strongly loved by you. Krishna used the word Druda earlier in the Bhagavad Gita, in 9:14. When he says, Satatam kirtayanto mam yatantascha drudavrataha. So Krishna has said that my devotees are firmly devoted to me. So Krishna says, Arjuna, you be firmly devoted to me. But Krishna is telling over here, I am not asking from you anything that I am not doing. He says, I want you to be firmly devoted to me, and I am firmly devoted to you. I strongly care for you. Drudamiti. What happens is, we turn away from Krishna, we forget Krishna, but Krishna never turns away from us. Krishna never forgets it. Drudamiti. Ishto sime drudamiti. Tato vakshami te hitam. Therefore, I am speaking this for your benefit. And then Krishna speaks Manmanabha and Sarvadhaman Parityajya. So this is not Krishna rejecting Arjuna's independence, but Krishna is respecting Arjuna's desire to know what Krishna wants him to do. And then, in one sense, Sarvabhuyatamam Bhuya, Sarvadharman Parityajya is the last instructive verse of the Gita. And Jiva Goswami gives a beautiful analysis that how do we know the purpose of a book? He says we can know the purpose of a book in many ways. But on the primary basis, we can look at its beginning and we can look at its end. So he says, what is the first word of the Bhagavad Gita? First word means the first instructive word spoken by Krishna in the Gita. The first word Krishna speaks is the first chapter. Uvacha partha pasyaitan samvetan kurvati. See, the Kauravas are there and Bhishma Drona are there. In the second chapter, Krishna speaks about, Baka, don't give in to weakness like this. That's 2, 2 and 3. The first instructive word that Krishna speaks is Ashochan. Ashochan. It's not worth lamenting. And the last instructive word that Krishna speaks is Ma Shuchaha. So Shuchaha can mean do not doubt. Shuchaha can mean also mean do not lament. So he says that based on, now after 1866, there are further verses, but they are more like Falashruti. The glory of studying the Gita, the glory of sharing the Gita, the glory of reciting the Gita. The last verse is instructive verse is 1866. So what is the point of this? The Gita begins by saying, this is not worth lamenting. And it ends by saying, not lament. Is the purpose of the Gita is to free humanity from lamentation. And in between, at the beginning, it's not worth lamenting and do not lament. In between, Krishna gives a worldview by which he shows how the things that we lament over are not worth lamenting over. That we may lament over our loss of some job, loss of some wealth, loss of some relationships, or loss of this possession, that possession. But Krishna says we are meant for far bigger things. We are eternal beings. We are meant for eternal joy, eternal life, eternal love. And even while we are here in this world, we are meant to make great contribution in Krishna's service. So the things that we lament about is there is a bigger plan in operation for all of us. In all our lives, there is this bigger plan, and sometimes our small plans may get frustrated. But Krishna's bigger plan never gets frustrated. So what the Bhagavad Gita does is that if we understand the Gita's worldview, then we get filled with this quiet conviction that Krishna's plan is still working in my life. And that conviction frees us from lamentation. It feels us, okay, this is bad, this thing happened, let's move on. Let's see what Krishna has in store for me. Let me move. Krishna has brought me so far. We all been on a many lifetimes journey. And Krishna has brought us so far. We are all practicing bhakti to some extent. And if you look at it, we didn't, how much have we sincerely, earnestly endeavored to practice bhakti? We have made some spiritual advancement. You can say, most at least I can say for myself, whatever spiritual advancement I have made, it is not because of me. It is in spite of me. It is, I'm attached, I'm conditioned, I'm doing everything possible to turn away from Krishna, but Krishna still keeps pushing us forward. So Krishna has brought us so far, in spite of our limitations, in spite of our weaknesses, in spite of our conditionings. Krishna has not brought us so far to abandon us now. Krishna has brought us so far to take us all the way. So even if there are many things worth lamenting, the Gita raises our vision from this world and the events happening to this world to Krishna's plan for this world and plan for us. And when we see that, then that frees us from lamentation. So Arjuna understands that, okay, Bhishma and Drona may die, but Krishna is a greater well-wisher of Bhishma and Drona than Arjuna ever can be. Arjuna may only postpone their death right now, but Krishna has a plan for their eternal deliverance. And therefore, for Arjuna to just cooperate with Krishna's plan is the best way for him to do the good for everyone, including Bhishma and Drona. And that is why this Ma Shuchaha, how does this work out? What is Arjuna's conclusion? Karishye vachinam tava. Karishye vachinam tava. I will do your will. At the end of hearing the Gita, Krishna doesn't tell, Arjuna doesn't tell Krishna, a great lecture. What does he say? I will do your will. Karishye vachinam tava. What does that mean? That means Arjuna understands that if I just do Krishna's will, then everything will work out well in the long run. Now, that is the conviction that we all should get. By hearing the Bhagavad Gita, I will do Krishna's will. And you say, how do I know what is Krishna's will? Well, there are areas in which we may not know what is Krishna's will. But there are areas in which we know what is Krishna's will. Now, for example, we practice our bhakti, we do our sadhana, we come in satsang, we do our responsibilities. So where we know what Krishna's will is, if we start doing that according to our capacity, then tadami bhakti yogam tam yenama upayantite. The more we do Krishna's will where we know what it is, the more Krishna will reveal his will to us in areas where we don't know what it is. And that is how we can do Karishye Vachanam Tava. At the basic level, at the very basic level, what does Karishye Vachanam Tava mean? It means that in any situation we are in, this Karishye Vachanam Tava, Krishna elaborates on this when Abhimanyu is killed. And Arjuna is devastated. Actually, initially, Arjuna is infuriated. And Arjuna lashes out at his brothers. He says, all your weapons, are they just ornaments? He says, could not one of you protect my son? He says, fire on me for entrusting his protection to you. And he gets angry and lashes out. At that time, Krishna goes to Arjuna and embraces him, hugs him, and he pulls him into hug and says, Arjuna, look at your brothers. He says, they loved Abhimanyu just as you loved him. They are all in grief, the way you are in grief at Abhimanyu's death. He says, in this world, adversities come upon everyone, the wise and the unwise. What differentiates the wise from the unwise is that the wise respond to distress by acting in ways that make things better. And the unwise act in ways that make things worse. Oh Arjuna, don't speak words that will increase the pain of your brothers. Don't. So what does this mean? Beyond the specific context, what it means is, if we are in a terrible situation, we may be in a difficult situation, but we can think, the way I'm acting right now, am I helping make things better? Or am I helping make things worse? So Karishye Vachanam Tava. Krishna wants the best for us ultimately. So in whatever situation we are, doing Krishna's will, having a service attitude, what does it mean? Just asking ourselves, what can I do to make things better? We may say, will things actually become better? We don't know that. That's where detachment is required. But what can I do to make things better? Can I play my part in it? So if we just ask this question, in this particular situation, what can I do to make things better? We'll find some path ahead. Some small thing we can do. Maybe we are overcome with gloom, we are feeling dismay and despair. Can I do something to make things better? Start with one thing, and one more thing. In the darkness in our life, just asking the question, what is God's will? God's will is that we use our free will properly. And using our free will properly means acting to make things better, not worse. So if we just have that, Krishna, how can I serve you? How can I make things better? So service attitude is not some mystical thing where suddenly, our spiritual master touches us on the head and then the path of life becomes suddenly clear for us. Or Krishna comes in a dream and tells us, do this. No, service attitude at a very basic level means acting in a way that we try to make things better. And if we do that, then Krishna will reveal further guidance to us. So that is Karishye Vachanam Tava at our practical level. And in this way, if we start doing this, that question, how can I serve Krishna? How can I act with my God-given intelligence, with my God-given abilities to make things better? And that question itself will become like a flashlight for us. The darkness will be all around us in our life, but that question will be like a flashlight that turns on. And it will help us see one step forward. It will not show the whole path. But Krishna, how can I serve? Prabhupada was asked, what is the best prayer we can offer to Krishna? Krishna, please give me the strength to serve you. So that service attitude is one step forward we will see. But when we take that one step forward, the flashlight will show us one step forward. We take one step forward, the flashlight will show the next step forward. And in that way, we'll keep moving forward. And then in due course, whatever darkness is around us, the darkness will dissipate. The light in our life will come back. But when that happens, our faith in service to Krishna will become much stronger. And that will equip us far more than having the brightest light around us. Because service attitude is the inner light that can never be taken away from us. The outer lights in our life can go away at any time, they can be taken away. But the inner light is service attitude. Whatever the situation, Krishna, how can I serve you? How can I act to make things better? It could just begin with speaking a kind word to someone. Just thinking about someone other than ourselves and seeing what we can do to help them. So if we do that, that is how we can become slowly but surely free from lamentation. That's what happened to Arjuna. Arjuna at the start of the Gita had put aside his, oh, I can't fight. At the end of the Gita, Yatra Yogeshwara Krishna, Yatra Partho Dhanurdhara. Arjuna has picked up his bow in readiness to fight. So Arjuna's bow represents our determination. Life can put us into such adversities. I quit. I give up. I just put aside this bow. I can't do it anymore. But if we hear the Bhagavad Gita, we understand the Bhagavad Gita, we'll all pick up our bows. Yes, I've quit. And now I've decided to quit quitting. Let quit quitting. I just do what I can. It is a small thing. And as we keep going forward, we'll find Krishna's guidance coming, Krishna's strength coming. And Krishna will take us to a better place. Ultimately, the best place in all of existence. I'll summarize quickly. We discussed from the 11th chapter till the 18th chapter. 11th chapter, why does Arjuna ask, who are you? Because he's seen the unfamiliar in the familiar. He wants to know who is this Kala Rupa. Because we had asked for the Vishwa Rupa, but the Kala Rupa was a bonus revelation. And Krishna shows the Kala Rupa by why? Because he wants to bring Arjuna back to the point of fighting. They are already killed, you can just be an instrument. And then Arjuna asks after that, okay, you showed how the materially all-pervasive form is subordinate to you. What about the spiritually all-pervasive form of yours? Krishna says that is also subordinate to me. He had also Bhakti Yoga. And then Arjuna asks, how does the Sankhya worldview fit into the Bhakti worldview that you are talking about? Krishna answers that over several chapters. 13th chapter, he answers the specific questions about the 6 terms. But 14th chapter, he talks about a term that is much more relevant to Krishna's description in the Gita. That is the gunas. And then at the end, Arjuna's attention is seen. Okay, how do I transcend the that question? And then Krishna answers by practicing undeviating bhakti. So we can't control our actions, we can't control our emotions, sometimes because of conditions, but we can still control our intentions. That's how we hold on to Krishna. In the 15th chapter, Krishna talks about the Urdhva Mula Vadashakana, the modes, how they lead to the pervasion of all of material existence, and how Krishna is the anchor who is sustaining all of existence, so that we can hold on to Krishna. The 16th chapter talks about, is it difficult for some people to hold on? Yes, their ungodly nature. But Shastra is there for elevating even them. If you don't follow Shastra, we are doomed. Then what if somebody has faith but not in Shastra? And Krishna says, look at the modes that are influencing them. And you look at the modes by looking at their food, looking at the way they belong to the universe. They belong to their own body, they belong to the society, and they belong to the universe at large. That is we look at their tapa, dana, and yajna. And then in the 18th chapter, when Arjuna asks the same question, what is the difference between renunciation and the renounced order? Krishna says that actually he answered the same question through the framework of the 3 modes. And then he gives a top view overview of the Gita. Again, the bottom view overview of the Gita in the 2nd chapter, and the top view overview of the Gita in the 18th chapter. So somebody at the bottom of the mountain telling what is the path up, and somebody from the top of the mountain telling what is the path. It's like that. That's the difference in the 18th chapter summary. And then last thing is Krishna respects Arjuna's free will, but at the same time, Krishna also senses Arjuna's eagerness to know what Krishna wants. And that's why after 1863, he speaks 1865-66. And if you look at the starting and ending instructive verses, the purpose of the Gita is to free us all from lamentation. And how does that happen? That is by understanding that our plans may be disrupted, but Krishna's plan is always working. And therefore, Karishye Vachanam Dhamma. I will play my part in Krishna's plan. And playing our part doesn't depend on some mystical revelation. It just means using our intelligence to ask, what can I do to make things better? And that service attitude can be like a flashlight when light becomes dark. And if we just use that service attitude, then we will become rejuvenated. Just as Arjuna picked up his bow, our determination will come back. And we can march through even the greatest of difficulties in life. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. have time for questions.
One or two questions.
Yes. Do not lament. There are not too many questions. Yes, Prabhu. You can speak, I'll repeat.
It's a very intense class. Thank you so much. So much. So one clarification.
Are you using intense in the American sense or the Indian sense? Intense in the Indian sense means serious. Intense in the American sense means overbearing. You know, when you say in America, he's an intense devotee. That means, he pressurizes everyone. That's what it is. In India, if you say intense devotee, it's very serious, practicing very seriously. It's cultural difference. Anyway, so which sense was it? Or both? Okay.
One clarification. So, in spite of practicing devotion service for many years, we sometimes succumb to come down the standard, become angry. So our intention is good, but still these hiccups, and then they disappoint us and become very guilty. So you mentioned about the service addiction that we should retain to overcome the situations. We generally want to elaborate how these are practical situations that we run into in life.
Yeah, see, my understanding is that the question is that despite practicing bhakti for many years, still sometimes our conditioning overpower us. So what do we do? My understanding is that Krishna doesn't give us purity before we get humility. Trunadapi Sinichana comes first, and Dhanam Yanam Sundari comes after that, the Shikshashtakam. So what happens is, when we are fighting against our conditionings and we're trying to overcome them, if we succeed and we get purity, what will happen is, it's quite probable that we'll become proud. See, I am so pure, I am so sense-controlled, I am so unattached. And that pride will be a bigger obstacle on our bhakti. So what happens is, quite often Krishna lets us fall. Krishna can remove our conditioning in one moment. But Krishna lets us fall and slip again and again till we realize that actually I am not, that my purity is not coming from me. It is coming from some higher mercy. And that's where humility comes. So rather than seeing our repeated lapses in bhakti or lapses in purity as an indication that maybe Krishna doesn't want us to become purified or that bhakti doesn't work, there are three inferences we can know. All three are wrong. That Krishna doesn't care for us, bhakti doesn't work, or I am too fallen for this. And all three are wrong. The point is that no soul is so fallen they can't be elevated. Bhakti is potent enough to elevate everyone, and Krishna wants us to be elevated. But we need humility. So sometimes we just need to be reminded that we can't be pure on our own. So if we pray to Krishna more intensely and try to connect with him and try to hold on to that connection more and more, and as that humility comes in, then purity will come gradually. Okay. Any other questions?
Krishna Prabhu, thank you so much for the class. Prabhu, I have a question that sometimes I feel Bhakti Yoga is very, very difficult. And even Krishna also says, Krishna Satat Yuktanam, whosoever does all the time and things like that. So it gives an impression that it's too difficult. And then another thing is, another part of the question is that in the end, whenever I see that, whenever I read a book, the last thing is the conclusion of the book. And in the Bhagavad Gita, the last conclusion is by Sanjaya. It says,
Yatra
Yogeshwara Krishna Partha Dhanodala Tattva. So how to relate to that conclusion and Bhakti Yoga conclusion? So
okay.
Do I very novice?
So Bhakti Yoga seems very difficult. Well, Yes, the spiritual life in general is very difficult, but among the various spiritual paths, Bhakti Yoga is the easiest. So it's a comparative framework. And definitely, in one sense, even material life, what is easier? Even material life, if you want to do something worthwhile, yattad agre vishamyo pariname amrutam. That's the principle. If you want a good career, you have to study for many years. If you want a healthy body, we have to exercise, we have to regulate our diet. So that is like, so poison is the way to nectar. That is a universal principle in life. We have to go through poison. We have to go through difficulty to gain anything worthwhile in life. That applies in material life also. It applies in spiritual life also. So yes, it is difficult, but there are two things which can make it easier. First is association of devotees. If you stay in association, then what makes bhakti difficult is our mind's oscillation, our mind's unpredictability. Actually, the mind is not unpredictable. You say it is actually predictably unpredictable. It will just be so moody, it will just keep changing. But what happens is, if you're in the association of devotees, we are less at the mercy of our mind. Because in the association of devotees, we get a current which pushes us along, helps us to counter push against the mind. That's one thing. And second is, if we can find even one thing in bhakti that we get taste for, then that when the poison is coming, I just don't feel like chanting. I just don't feel like waking up in the morning. But there's one thing I like to do. I like to hear classes, or I like to hear kirtans. I like to go to the temple and do some seva. That one source of nectar will enable us to tolerate that poison and persist to it till we get the nectar. So those two things, finding one thing in bhakti that gives us taste and trying to stay in association, will make the difficulty much lesser. Okay. And the last part of Yatra Yogeshwara Krishna, how does it tie in? See, in one sense, you say wherever there is Krishna, there is wealth. Wherever there is Krishna, there is power. Wherever there is Krishna, there is victory. So that is always there. But in the Bhagavad Gita's conclusion, it is not saying where there is Krishna, it is where there is Krishna and where there is Arjuna. So why is Arjuna needed in the last verse? Isn't it? Krishna is Lakshmipati. So where is Krishna, there Lakshmi will be there. So there will be wealth. So the point is that the purpose of the Bhagavad Gita is not to glorify God's position. That is glorified in the Gita, but that's not the purpose of the Gita. The purpose of the Gita is to transform our disposition. So, what does that mean? Wherever Krishna, there is victory, there is wealth, that is true. But in this world, wherever there is Krishna and Arjuna together, that means wherever the human and the divine come together, that is where there will be victory. So that is the essence of bhakti. So bhakti doesn't just mean that, we'll go to Krishna and be united with Krishna. That is true. That is true. But Krishna wants the best things in the world also for the devotees. Now, Krishna wants that who can use this material world the best? It is devotees. So Krishna wants to give the whole world to his devotees. As long as those devotees won't take the world and go away from Krishna. So what happens is, the world, Krishna wants everything. Krishna doesn't just want adversity for us in this world so that we'll become serious in bhakti. Krishna wants everyone in this world to become devotees. And how will they become devotees? Yadidacharati sreshtas. So if the devotees are the most successful people in the world, the devotees are the most successful software engineers, the devotees are the most successful politicians, the devotees are the most successful poets, the devotees are the most successful sports players. What will happen? Everybody will be attracted. And the others will become devotees. So Krishna wants even material success for his devotees. But as long as that material success doesn't infatuate the devotees and take them away from him. So what on the battlefield context that verse is saying is that Sanjay said to Dhritarashtra that on that Kaurava side there will not be victory, on the Pandava side where there's Krishna and Arjuna there will be victory. So that's a specific meaning. But the universal meaning is wherever the human and divine come together in a strong bond of union, there will be victory, there will be power, there will be glory. And we see this in Srila Prabhupada's example. Prabhupada went to America all alone, or came to America all alone. And he said that I am surrendered to you. Nachao, Prabhu, nachao. Just make me dance as you want. Wherever there is the human Prabhupada and the divine Krishna, they came together. What happened was, there was Sri Vijayo Bhutir. What happened? A person at the age of 70 with practically no money came to a foreign land. And within 10 years, had 108 temples, wrote 70 books, inspired millions of people toward love of God. What more extraordinary display of power and glory can be there? So that conclusion of the Bhagavad Gita is not just demonstrated in the Kurukshetra battlefield, it is demonstrated in recent history, in Srila Prabhupada's life itself. And it can be demonstrated in our life also, if we become firmly bonded with Krishna. Okay? Thank you very much.
Please stay back. We'll take a group photo. We are very fortunate to have the great Chaitanya Prabhu here. So these 4 days, I don't know how it went by. Prabhu did more than 4 sessions in the Bhagavad Gita overview. He did 3 more extra sessions, and he met over 20 days. And more than that, he was also in parallel. He used to wake up early in the morning. He used to do podcast and remote session for the other congregations and corporate preaching. So, as I mentioned earlier, Prabhu is not in the top of his health or best of his health, but still you can see his energy and enthusiasm when it comes to preaching. Also, Prabhu is really very appreciative of the nectar we all in this congregation have for Shravanam, for hearing. And that inspired Prabhuji. We had a discussion. So in future, the temple management, we are planning to do a 20 or 22 days of very deep study of Bhagavad Gita in a classroom setting, where Prabhu will go 1 chapter a day, verse by verse, and so we will be so fortunate to have that session. So I'm very eagerly looking forward for it. So as I said, Prabhu has found very positive vibe within the congregation and his visit. So let's also express our gratitude and thank him. Before that, I will let Prabhu speak about the 2 books, because we are taking the orders for these books. We ran out of it, but soon we will get it. If you give an advance order, we'll surely get the book very good.
So what I spoke today in the last 4 days, most of it is what is crystallized for me after reading various commentaries, contemplating on the Gita, and especially after writing these 2 books. So these 2 books I wrote in the pandemic primarily, and they present the Gita from this relation Bhagavad Gita presents from a relational perspective. So Krishna, Arjuna, their thoughts, their emotions. I spoke a few things about that. There are many beautiful aspects of the Krishna-Arjuna relationship that are revealed in the Gita. So this is a relation Bhagavad Gita, 100 articles about the relationship between Krishna and Arjuna as revealed in the Gita. And this is Bhagavad Gita insights. So the Gita concepts explained from a rational perspective in a way that we can ourselves understand and can communicate with others. So both these books are available for those of you who like to get a deeper understanding. And there are 100 articles. Most of the articles are phrased as titles, are phrased as questions. So you don't have to read them linearly also. What you just look to the index, table of contents, and see whichever questions interest you, whichever questions you would like to have answered, and you can read those. So it's a very accessible way for getting I would say, not just getting a deeper understanding of the Gita, but gaining a greater taste for the Gita. Thank you very much. Hare.
So in the back, we have Srinivas Sharan Prabhu, who is going to raise his hand, so you can give order to him, and we'll make sure that we get this. So we'd also like to thank His Grace Namrata Prabhu, His Grace Damodar Prasad Prabhu for facilitating these sessions by Chaitanya Prabhu. Also, we are very indebted and grateful for Harilas Maharaj for all the guidance. So let's also express our gratitude and thank His Grace Chaitanya Prabhu for taking this endeavor and walking through the overview of Bhagavad Gita by loudly chanting Hari Bol 3 times from the core of the heart. Hari Bol! Hari Bol! Hari Bol! So we all will now assemble for a group photo. And His Grace Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu will be the expert photographer.